everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Authors on Mission podcast, where we dive deep into the strategies and stories of experts who've turned their experiences into powerful messages that change lives in their books. I'm your host, Danielle Hutchinson, Chief Creative Officer at Authors on Mission, and I'm thrilled to welcome another Authors on Mission employee here, Jodi Cunningham. She's known for her #1 Amazon bestseller, Estrangement, and she has an amazing journey, going from a golf instructor to ballroom dancing, and now she's a leading voice in helping people navigate the complex waters of estrangement. And even more so, she's here with us at Authors on Mission, helping new authors join our team and bring their own stories to life. So we're going to have a really fun talk today about the writing process and everything that Jodi's accomplished. So without further ado, Jodi, welcome to our show.
Thank you. It's so nice to be talking to you face to face again, Danielle.
Yeah, it's really funny with the way that remote work happens these days. I feel like we see each other on email lists, and then it's like it's nice to put a name to that face. I feel like a lot of our listeners too can probably relate to that. With big companies these days, and remote work and resume calls. It's great to meet you.
Right. It's so nice that you can actually stay home and meet people from all over the world, and that's really. As an author strategist for the company, there's people from all over the world that I get to talk to every week. And, if you're in a brick and mortar building, they have to come to you. But this makes it really nice to be able to communicate. I mean, technology it's a wonderful thing, but as long as it's working good for everybody.
Yeah, and I'm glad you kind of brought that up, because it is kind of funny that, I have the same experience. Everybody who hops onto my podcast, they're authors from all over the world as well. And, I get to hear so many different stories, and most of the time they're in the comfort of their living room, like with their animals and dogs and whatever else. And it's also just a little personal touch to it too. So I love that.
It really is. Yeah, it really is. I've even had some people laying on their beds before, but thankfully they were clothed.
Yeah, that would be a benefit. Well, without further ado, I guess it's time to kind of just dive in and talk a little bit about what you do. You have a #1 bestseller out there on Estrangement. So tell our listeners right now a little bit about how did you come to that topic? Why did you choose to fill that niche in the writing world? And what happened after publishing? Tell us all about it.
Well, I actually joined Authors on Mission a little over a year ago, and I had written self-published books before, and I'd also published another book with another company that was a publishing company. So when I got on with Authors on Mission, I didn't realize how excellent they were with doing a self-published book, helping people that want to self-publish. And I wanted to have a book that actually had my website on it that could drive people to me, not just another publishing company under my book. And I wanted to have full right and control of my book. For example, sometimes if you don't self-publish your book and you go through a publishing company, they'll actually charge you double, maybe 3 times the amount that Amazon would charge you to get your author's copies. So when I started seeing how Authors on Mission just really is for the self-publishing person to not only take the royalties for themselves, but also to buy their books off the back end. I can buy my Estrangement book paperback for $2 to $3 a book, but I have another book that is under a publisher, and they charge me almost $6 a book.
That's a great point to make, because it's interesting that a lot of people out there, I think, their initial impression of publishing versus self-publishing is that maybe it's not going to be as professional if it's like publishing house, but you make a great point there, because you get the authority over your own work. That's just a whole other avenue that I think a lot of people, especially our listeners today, might not be aware of. Is that a common concern that you faced? Was that a big decision for you, I guess, first off, to make? And then also, is that a common concern when other authors come to you?
Well, it was a huge decision for me, especially with Estrangement. So I became estranged from my children 7 years ago, and I went through a lot of counseling. I put a bunch of it down. I have a bunch of information, but I never put it in a manuscript. But as I started working for Authors on Mission, I was like, I have spent a lot of money, time, and energy doing this. I'm going to put it in a manuscript so I can help people. And my book was only out 3 months, and my daughter started responding to me. So I'm really happy about that. But also, when you go as self-published, I've got another book again that is with a publisher. And if they go out of business, I have to republish my book. And
Really?
Danielle, I'll have to republish it if they're not there anymore. But the only way I'd have to republish an Amazon self-published book is if Amazon's not there anymore, which
Less likely.
they're kind of stuck. I think we might be stuck with them. So,
I never really thought about it that way. I guess, you can consider that the book would always be on the shelves for people to buy, even if the publisher ran out of business, but then new copies wouldn't be out there. Is that kind of where the
that's
problem
right.
was?
And then, what's interesting is this year, I've spoken to hundreds of authors and signed actually several, but almost, I think 8 of them last year actually signed to republish as a self-published book. They just did a second edition because they wanted that control.
Yeah, I can see why, and that's an amazing point to make. Before we go too much into this, though, I'm curious to know a little bit more about sort of, I guess, your writing process in itself. You said you spent so much time writing down your experiences from the past 7 years before writing this. I mean, did you start with the intention to write a book? It sounds like it kind of just came out of your passion for writing it down. Is that true?
It definitely did. And all my books were like that. So my first book that I wrote is for golfers, and it was just a passion to help my golfers because I was an LPGA teaching pro. And I just wrote a pamphlet. I came here actually to Las Vegas where I live, and I had a physical therapist actually give me the exercises for the golfer. And that's in a book. And I've had thousands of downloads off of that. I needed it for my students. Then the next book was just a fiction book. I was getting my master's in theology, and I took an Old Testament story and weaved it into modern time, published that. And then I just had to get it out of my head. Estrangement, I was like, I'm going to put this in a paperback because Authors on Mission is going to help it really reach a lot of people. And, I've got quite a bit of money in therapy, but my book is only like $14.99, and you're going to get what I got in therapy. How great is that?
So that's a great way to sell it because, I mean, yeah, why spend years doing that when everything you learned is right there on the page for someone to flip right to and take with them? I looked at the book a little bit, but I think it's pretty clear that you lay out everything in a very easy way for people to just grab what they need and kind of run with it, whatever it is they need in that situation with Estrangement. So I guess I'm kind of curious to know, as I looked through your book, it was true that you've been on kind of both sides of Estrangement throughout your life. Is that true as both a mom and a daughter?
Mm-hmm. Right. Yes. So with my family bloodline on my mom's sides, my mom had some estrangement, her mom had estrangement. And so it was almost as if it's cultural in our family. And there was just some basic things that we all kind of struggled with that kind of broke down our communication. And estrangement could be anything from maybe you don't tell your mom or your daughter something that might be important for them to know, or you completely cut them off. And so in every generation we had that. And one of the chapters talks about just like your expectations. Are they known? Are they feasible? Are they kind? And what do you do when nobody meets your expectations? Because you can't hold people accountable for their behavior, only your own.
Right. And I guess that kind of just goes directly into what you called the 3 camps idea, right? I guess, does that go into different intentions like you were just talking about? I mean, you mentioned culture was one of the camps within your introduction.
Yeah, culture would definitely be. So my book is based also with my theology education. So the camps would be your personal camp or your personal kingdom. Like a lot of times, what is our personal desire? What do we personally want to do? And so we have to wrestle with our own personal thoughts and what we're going to do. And the second one would be your cultural camp. And basically, what is your culture doing? What is your family as a culture doing? What is your school as a culture doing? What is your work as a cultural doing? What is America doing? What is China doing? What is Canada? So those 2 camps there, they have different aspects. And the third camp I call the enemy camp. That's kind of like in your personal camp or your cultural camp, there's something sinister, twisting things to kind of knock you off balance. And when you recognize what that is, you can say, you know what? My culture might be wanting me to do something, but that's not for me because I feel like it's maybe hurting another culture and I won't do it. Or maybe like in your personal life, you might think like, yeah, the enemy would love for me to gossip and tear somebody else down, but that's not what I want. Does that make sense to you? That's what's
Yeah,
in one of the
definitely.
chapters.
And I suppose that, all of this came from years of therapy that brought you to this. Was there any sort of other experiences that led you to kind of define these three camps? And for example, did you conduct any studies or just something that you found that worked for you that you
Right.
worked for other
Right.
people?
So Dr. Hogan, she's actually a professor at Grand Canyon University, and she did her thesis on it. And it's just so incredible because let's say you have an argument with your best friend or you have an argument with your sister. Well, before you go and sit down and tell her how you feel, maybe write it down and break it into a camp. Like, personally, how do I feel about this? And then culturally, as sisters or friends, what is the culture pressuring us to do? And then look at the enemy camp. Like, do I want to get one up on my sister? Do I want to take something from my friend? And then realize maybe this is gossip and maybe it's not even an issue and you can let it go. But once you look at it on a diagram, you could break it down and maybe let some of the emotions go free to be able to have a really nice neutral tonality conversation with that person that you care about.
It sounds like there's a big part of this that almost involves just like taking a step back, just pausing for a moment and thinking about it rather than reacting in the spot. Like you mentioned, when you put it into a visual graph, I suppose that part of that would be that you have to give it time to think about how you want to react. Like you can't really be too impulsive for this kind of thing. You have to think about it in the terms of the camp.
Yeah, if you can think about estrangement as the natural response to put yourself in a timeout, kind of like, when you have like a mother swan with baby swans on her back and there's a storm and she puts those wings over those babies aren't strong enough to swim in that storm yet. So if you could just take the time to stay, I call it in the virtue of the safety of quiet, try not to step over into a vice of being morally superior or a vice in like the world's going to crash and everybody's, going to face Armageddon, because us moms especially can do that. So, right.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, so I get that. Yeah. And, the other thing I noticed is amazing is that, kind of just going into the writing process of all this too. I'm guessing you included those visuals within the book, or at least kind of
Definitely.
Yeah. So again, another way to relate it to the reader and really just hone in on that, which is something I mention all the time on this podcast is, making sure that the reader finds it accessible and finds practical ways to actually implement it and put it into their lives too. So I think that's another great thing about this book. And honestly, I think any listeners today could probably find use from that too. Whether or not they find themselves estranged in their own family, they can apply that kind of framework to any situation in their lives, be it their coworkers, friends, family members, even if things seem great now. I mean, knowing these skills is something that we can all use. So I think you found a great topic.
Yeah, so Danielle, 8 of the chapters are totally exactly for anybody. It says for mothers and daughters, but it's for men and it's for boys, it's for everybody. But you have to remember my objective. And every author that comes to Authors on Mission, they have an objective. What do they want their book to do? And my number one objective was to be able to get my daughter talking, to help welcome my daughter in a specific way. Like, my mom's not acting the way she was before. My mom's got clear expectations now. My mom's trying to take care of herself personally and not control the culture. And she could read through that. And so my objective was to reach her. But you're right, it can go with everybody. And anybody who writes a book, they need to have an objective. And once they hit that objective, then it's so worth it, whether they get their rate of return on sales quicker or they hit their objective first.
I like that you kind of circled it back to how, everybody has that objective. And I'm sure that, every author that comes to you, just like they come to me, has that in mind, right? Their goal that they want to accomplish in that book, whether it's to fill a need in the industry or to promote themselves for speaking engagements or they simply just have a great idea. I mean, I'm sure you've heard just like all different types of needs. What are some of like the top needs that our clients come to you for in terms of for their books? I'm assuming a lot of it's probably for speaking engagements, that sort of thing, but
Right. Actually, it's usually for their business leads. They're looking to have their leads have a book where they can have access to them 24/7 and kind of see how is the company going? How can the company help? What can they do to train and help people and get them to step out and help themselves? And then come to the company for more advice. One of the reasons why I went through so much counseling is I actually found a counselor on a podcast with a book. And I spent a lot of time with her. She's so busy that I'm on a waiting list. Super
Really?
smart. It's helped me with everything. So,
That's amazing to know because, I mean, anybody who hops on a podcast, for example, and just shares their experiences, you don't know who's going to be listening to that. Anybody could open up Spotify and find that podcast now, and you don't know the lives that you can touch. I mean, here you go. You found your therapist right from there, from that conversation. So it's an amazing thing to think about. And I guess kind of just tying it back into, your work as what you do here at Authors. It's interesting to think because you're the one who takes the client, shows them how we can help them reach those goals. And then, everybody else on our team helps them to meet them as well. I mean, I was kind of thinking to myself, like, yes, I've had a lot of clients come to me for angel writing, for example, who wanted to find a way to meet their needs. So it's great that we're able to kind of work as a team here, even as synchronously as we do.
Well, and anybody who's thinking about it, they don't know if they want to write a book or they don't know if they want to step out, you're a little bit nervous, or maybe you're not sure you want to put the effort in. If you think about it, what is it like without a book? And, this book for mine could have came out a lot sooner. And for other people also, what would have happened without that book? The people that have books now and have used it as a lead domino, hitting all the dominoes and all these opportunities opened. Well, they've got a book. Everybody that's doing well, what do they have? A book. Because they're communicating with their neighbor.
Right. And it's interesting to think that, all you have to do sometimes is just get your ideas out onto that page, and you never know, where it can go from there, whatever the topic might be. I think that's an incredible point to make there. I'm curious to know, do you have any sorts of stories from people who, now that you have your book out there, have come to you talking about how their own lives might have been impacted by reading your book? I mean, putting your book on the shelves resonates with lots of people. For example, the psychologist, the therapist that you reached out to was able to reach you through there. Do you have any experiences from your own book from people reaching out to you?
Yes, and I've even been asked to do speaking engagements here in Las Vegas for women's groups. So that's been very nice. And then I've gotten these random emails and these random texts thank you so much. I feel like my world is not going to be over because my children aren't talking to me. Or thank you so much. I have hope in focusing on my natural talents. I talk a lot about focusing on your natural talents. Because when you're a mom, you do everything for your children. And so when your kids are gone, you only have yourself. And so for example, I started a fashion line in making ballroom dresses. I ballroom dance. I have 2 #1 bestsellers. So, and I have a job with Authors on Mission. Where did that come from? It certainly didn't come from, doing all things with my kids. And I love it. So I feel stronger. I feel like I'm more happier, balanced person for when my children do come back.
You definitely balance a lot of different, very interesting things here. I mean, ballroom dancing, how did you even fall into that? I mean, you just you've had a passion for that and decided, let me just dabble in this. And then it kind of just blew up from there. Is that what happened? I mean,
well, this is so honest. I got married at 19. I was a baby. I met my husband at 16, got married at 19. And I was a dancer before that. I didn't do ballroom, but I did jazz and tapping. I actually did Miss Billings, Montana in 1987. Isn't that funny?
Wow.
Yeah. So, and I won it through dancing. So, but once you get married, you do everything for the family. So my ex-husband and I got a divorce. We were married 33 years. He went his own way. And I was like, I don't really want to date. So because, dating after that many years, it's like, what do you do? And we could have many podcasts on dating. It's pretty funny. So I'm like, what can I do to be around a man, but go home and yet still get that feeling? Well, I can do ballroom dancing. So I actually have a really great ballroom instructor. I spend 3 days a week dancing with him. I've done 3 different years of a ballroom competition, and he just keeps making me better. I just get to dance with him. So, and that's more than enough for me while I'm waiting for a guy that, is going to fit into my world.
That's really raw and really personal. And thank you so much for sharing that with us and to our listeners. I mean, God, I wasn't expecting you to go there with that, but I definitely see what you mean. Because I was kind of imagining, like, I do have a steady boyfriend now, but there was a period of time where, like, I had broken up with somebody, and I was in a period where I was kind of a little bit lost too, and I was dabbling in things. And, for myself, I took up running, and I did like a marathon. Like, everybody has their little.
Good for you.
So yeah. I mean, I don't do it anymore now that I'm not single anymore. I should.
Well, you
But
know what's so funny? I was married 33 years. So for 33 years, I was hugged and told I was loved every day, except for towards the end. So to be able to come out of that, I even at one time lived in a really posh apartment, and there was a young man next to me who was like only 40, and he's like 15 years younger than me. And I said, I know this is strange, but could you hug me and say hello every day? He did that every day for a year.
really,
He even calls me honey. He says he loves me. I mean, it's totally platonic, but that hug, that dancing, it just gets you over that hump of like thinking, am I supposed to have a boyfriend? Am I supposed to have a guy? At least so you can make a wise decision and not just go for the first guy that comes along.
I like that. It's kind of just keeping it balanced, and you get the interaction, and to feel confident about yourself when you're dancing and you're having fun, and it just kind of breaks it up a bit. Like you
Yeah.
get out there, but then you get to go home too and do things for yourself. And
Yeah.
I guess kind of taking that idea and taking, your experiences with golf and your theology degree and, the writing that you've done too. This is a lot of different skills and a lot of different experiences. So what I'm thinking here is, I mean, you just connected with me by talking about, what it's like to be single and try to find something else, right? Does that help you connect with authors too when you're talking to your clients? And I'm sure you're able to just kind of find something in them that you guys both have experiences with just because you have your hands in so many different pots. Does that make sense?
Well, what I think is pretty fascinating is that I'm doing very well with Authors on Mission, and I did 33 years as an adult where my ex-husband's job traveled all the time. So I had 33 addresses, including living over in Luxembourg, the country, and I've been in 10 countries over in Europe and some of Asia, and 15 states here. So almost everybody I talk to, I have something in common with. It's amazing.
That's a huge strength to have, especially in any industry, but especially with writing, because I mean, you can hop on a call with any author, any person, and talk to them. And I guess, for our listeners today, this is relevant because just kind of an urge to get yourself out there too, right? Like the more experiences you have, even if you just go to the next state over and try something new, I mean, it gives you something to talk about, something to connect with, and you never know where your next writing idea can come from that too.
So if you have a company, like I had golfing, so I have my golfing book. I have Estrangement. So because I did Estrangement, I have the book. And then I'm working on some other books. If you have a restaurant, why don't you have a book? Why don't you have a recipe book? I just went to New York City, went to one of my favorite breakfast places, and I have their cookbook for 4 years, but that's what is in their cookbook I actually buy. So, if you have a business and you don't have a book, it is limiting. And you just have to get honest with yourself and realize, what can a book do for me now that I've been doing so much and I need a book to help me with? And that's a good decision to say, it's time to get myself a book.
I think you just blew my mind right there, because I worked at a restaurant for many years. I was a waitress, and I was thinking to myself, I'm like, my boss is writing a book. It makes sense, right? Like, why not?
Right.
Even if it's just about like their journey establishing the restaurant, or just a certain time period. You never know, but it could not only promote your restaurant, but we are able to put your name on a book that's adding to your legacy even more so. I think that's incredible.
Yes, and I just spoke with an author tomorrow, and she's getting ready to sign, and she actually has a restaurant in the southern part of the hemisphere, and she just flew into Vegas today, where the Mandalay Bay is showcasing some of her recipes. And so she's in Las Vegas showcasing recipes without a book. She's almost in a panic because she knows she could get thousands of people to download her book from Las Vegas. So you need to be prepared for tomorrow. A book completely done as a #1 bestseller will prepare you for the opportunities that come tomorrow.
Yeah, even if you don't find yourself in engagements like that now, you never know. And I've heard authors tell me a book is like your business card. Sometimes, someone asks you like, so what do you do? What advice do you have? Here's my book, just read it. I mean, that's kind of one reason why a lot of people write it too.
Yeah.
All right there.
Yeah, and I wrote Estrangement for that. That was like one of my secondary, tertiary objectives is somebody asked me, why are your children not with you? I homeschooled my kids. I did everything. And I will say, read the book. Read the book. I don't want to waste my energy on that. Just keep moving forward and be positive.
Yeah, I mean, you're still able to touch people's lives all the time just by having that. And, you don't even know when you are. I think that's just an amazing point to keep coming back to also. So I guess I'd like to kind of dive into the actual writing process too for you, for your book.
Perfect.
I mean, when you sat down and you started writing all this, what was going through your head? How did you know exactly what content you wanted to put in there? We talked about this a little bit before, but let's dive in a little bit deeper. Exactly. Like, did you brainstorm in advance? Did it just flow out of you? Did you hit a lot of writer's block?
Well, because my books were out of necessity, and I've been journaling for a very long time. So journaling is very important. So as I started realizing I could put this together as a book, and then I would start just writing. One time I talked to an author back in like early 2000. She said, think about it, running naked as a kid. You just write. So you just kind of run with it. And then what you could do is you could even, if you need to, get like different notebooks for each chapter or different highlighters for each chapter, and then start pulling in points. Let's say you have 12 chapters, 270 pages. You have a big theme. Then you start doing different points and subpoints, and then visit each chapter. It's going to take a little while, but one step in front of the other, it'll happen. And if you need help writing it, we have coaches at Authors on Mission, and we have angel writers.
Just like me.
Yeah, just like you.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to be an expert writer and by any means to get a book out there these days. As long as you have a goal in mind, a purpose, like we mentioned before, we're able to find a way to get you there. And even if we're writing it or you're writing it and we just edit it, or you've already wrote it and you just need someone to help you spread the word, we kind of just have it all, don't we, Jodi? I mean, whatever the client needs, just tailor it right to them.
And think about some of the books that those books had angel writers or ghost writers. So you're not alone if you need to have a ghost writer. And angel writers, they're professional writers. They know what's on your mind. They'll do research for you and put together a wonderful manuscript that you'll be very, very proud of.
You just have a perfect way of framing that so that it makes sense. Like, who can deny that, right? Like, you don't have an excuse not to write a book. You don't have enough time. Angel writers are there to help you. You're not a good writer. Angel writers, editors, or even just time managing yourself. I wrote a blog not too long ago about, even if you're a busy entrepreneur, just sit down and find some time between meetings, voice message yourself in the car and just like get your ideas out there. And even if it leads to a mess of notes, you send that over to your angel writer, your book's going to get out there. So that's another point too.
That's right. And we have recordings. We can record our voice and send it over.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of my clients do that too. They just send me a recording, even in the middle of the night sometimes. I wake up to message saying like, Danielle, I just had this idea for chapter 2. We need to add it in. And I'm like, great. I'll add it in when I wake up and get started. But like, it doesn't matter. It's like sometimes your best ideas come whenever they are. But that's kind of the flexibility and the amazing things that we do here. It's with you, whatever your process is, and just helping you get it out there.
Yeah, so if you do journal and you have a journal with you and you wake up in the middle of the night, write it down. I highly recommend removing your phone by your bed, but put a journal because you need that sleep.
Yeah, that's definitely a good idea too. And it's also a lost art to just like get that pen out and actually write rather than typing it onto a screen. So some of that practice too. It helps you remember it as well whenever you're writing something down, because sometimes voice to text, you'll get lost in your brain, but the act of physically writing something down helps you to further develop the idea and remember it later on too. So I guess I'm kind of curious to know, you've been helping people so many times, being a coach and helping people find the hope and the healing through your book. I'm curious, how do you find what each person needs and how do you lead them to that ultimate purpose within their book? And when you find what they're doing, how do you know what package they're looking for or what kind of services they might need just based on that?
So finding out whether or not they can write the manuscript, need a coach, or having a ghostwriter, that's pretty easy. The hard part is finding out what is their objective. And aside from they really might want to do the book, short of the apocalypse happening, what would stop you from doing that book? And then they need to really introspectively look inward and decide, 5 years from now, is it going to be good for me to not have my book? Or I'm going to be glad I have it? What would my life have been 5 years ago had I had my book? This is so funny because I was in high school when I read The Art of the Deal. And I know it might not be politically popular, but Look Who's President twice. And I read that book. And I don't know for sure, but I think he had a ghostwriter.
Yeah, I mean, you'd be surprised. So many best-selling books out there. It's ghostwriters, I mean, how
That's
else
right.
can celebrities get their ideas out like that? They need help. Anybody does, even if they're, no matter how involved you want to be in the process. Even an editor and a proofreader at the very basic is always very important too. I mean, I guess kind of branching off from that, going back to your own book too, how much of like a team service did you have when writing it? Did you have editors as well after the fact, or a team kind of help you put it together a lot? Or
Right. I did the Elevate pathway with the Authors on Mission. So we had the editors, the formatting, the book cover. But with my book cover, I said, I want my book cover to have a mom and daughter in the sunset where the sun is setting, and they're each on their own side of the bridge, and their own side of the bridge is equal because they both have to equally work on themselves. And so they look so close together, they just have to reach out. They're so far apart, but yet close together. And even if one of them is not really healed and they try to blow up the other bridge, it doesn't get blown up because they have to use their own bricks from their own bridge. And so my cover is that exactly.
Jodi, do you have the book with you right now? Can you show us that cover? I have a feeling.
Yeah, it's right here. Yeah, it's right here.
Can you just hold it up a little bit straighter? Let's take a look. So they are level, they're very equal to each other. Yeah.
It's fun because one looks a little older and a little younger. And I said I wanted it in sunset because I always think about, and I wrote in the book something, my paraphrase, about how I wanted each mom and daughter to get out of their own head and get out into the sunset. And may a mother and daughter meet each other equally in the sunset of that last day and start fresh in the morning. Because in estrangement, time is one thing that really does heal estrangement. If you do the work, you could be stuck. But if you do the work, you can get to the place where you meet in the sunset and you have the next day and the rest of your life together.
That is absolutely beautiful for you to say. I mean, wow. And all from just the cover of your book. And I mean, we're not supposed to judge books by their cover, but I mean, hey, look at that. I think I want to open it up right now and just kind of like take a look. Because if, what you just described is any relation to what's inside the book, I mean, that's really powerful stuff. And like you said, not just for mothers and daughters, but for any audience out there, anybody listening. That's incredible. You know what's crazy though? I was listening and talking to this one author not too long ago. He was an amazing guy, right? And he holds up his book for me and I'm like, wow, like I love it. And I was like, I also did the same thing. I was like, wow, I love how like this piece kind of symbolizes this in your book. He goes, oh, they just made the cover for me. I was like, okay, then you didn't have a say in your own book cover? I was like, at Authors on Mission, you can make it look however you want. I was very surprised. Do you get that a lot? I mean, I feel like that should kind of be a given that, you write your book, you should pick what's on the cover.
Well, what's nice about us is that we have a cover designer that will make you a very nice cover with your input. However, we even have the cover contest. So we will send out your idea to 30 plus cover creators, artists. They'll all bid to try to put their cover in for you because they want to be paid for their cover. And then you get to choose what you want. And we'll even put it on a contest where people will vote on it because the cover is very, very important.
Jodi, I need to talk to you more about that. That's something I actually love so much. We
do this at Authors on Mission, Danielle.
It's so funny because I'm on like the writing side of it, and sometimes I edit it, I write it, and then it goes off to the next stage. I'm loving learning about these after stages. I mean, wow. And to think about the fact that like now not only is your content being looked at and promoted by these people who are bidding over your artwork, but that person that you chose really put their heart and soul and everything into it too. So just more people who love your idea and love your book and are working together to package it all up exactly how you like. I love that. It's amazing. just going to say your book cover is gorgeous too. So, I mean,
And I
anybody else
told them what I wanted because there wasn't any like that. And it was just verbally expressed it. And that's what they came up with. So I'm really proud of my cover and I'm proud of them.
Yeah, and as you should be. I mean, it's a bestseller. It's out there. It's very well done. So I guess I'm kind of curious now. I mean, you have this book. You're working with us at Authors. What's next for you? What next on the horizon?
A TEDx talk is next.
I had a feeling.
Yeah, on it for Estrangement. And that's going to be scary, but I actually make ballroom dresses. I made myself a royal blue dress suit to wear for TEDx. So, I got
the outfit set up, but the actual words need to be made. So I hear.
Yeah, I kind of know what to say, but I want you to help me because
100%.
We help each other with that. But I'm going to have my Lorraine Faith fashion dress on YouTube, 41 million subscribers. I'm going to do the Estrangement talk. Hopefully many people will want to say, hey, why am I acting like I need to estrange from myself? Read some chapters and start getting real with themselves. And then from there, Authors on Mission will even promote your video so you can get 100,000 views. We'll actually market your video for you. Did you know that?
I think I did know that part. I knew that we have amazing marketing services that promote like the books, anything else that you do with us. So, I mean, hey, if you need your ideas to get out there and you don't want it to just sit on a shelf and gather dust, I mean, what other better way, right? I mean, we're kind of here for you on every angle. And that's, I think, what's different about Authors as opposed to any other publishing company. We're really just tailored to whatever our clients need in any way. So I love that we're able to do that. And you being somebody who works with us too is also benefiting from it by being able to share your own ideas too, and that's also great. I'm gonna probably follow in your footsteps one day too with my own book. Who knows?
I can't wait.
Yeah.
Maybe we can make your dress design for your TEDx.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think after this call, I'm sure maybe you don't want to reveal the dress now on the podcast, but you might have to pull that dress out to show me afterwards. I'm very excited to see.
Maybe so.
But yeah, I mean, as we start to kind of wrap up today, I wonder, do you have one last piece of advice that you want our listeners today to sort of hold on to and carry on with them after this call ends?
Mm-hmm. So if you're thinking about writing a book, start journaling it, work on it, because you do have to have skin in the game. Your book is going to represent you, and where that book takes you, you're going to follow in those footsteps. So if you have always felt like, hey, I can't do this or I can do this, just put it in a book and then do it. Give no one else a reason to not hire you, no one else a reason to pass you by. Get your book done.
I love that. That is beautifully said, as it should be. And to all of our listeners today, if you're inspired by Jodi's story and, everything we've said today really does lay out every reason to why somebody should get their book out there. It's easy as anything. And Authors, we really just support you in any way. It's almost like we're holding your hand and saying, here you go. It's all right here for you.
So that's right.
For that.
We'll take you from 0 to 60 in a hot minute.
Love that. Yes. Well, everybody, thank you so much for listening today. Jodi, it's been a real pleasure to chat with you and just kind of, have some one-on-one time like this. It's a lot of fun and it's been a really powerful conversation too. I mean, your story, if nothing else, really shows what Authors on Mission is all about, from going from tough experiences and then turning them into wisdom that can just help anybody out there in their book. It's a lot. And then not only that, but you also help other authors find their own voice too by showing them the books they need to write. So, hey, kudos to you. And I can't wait to help you work on your TED Talk and get it out there. We'll talk a little bit more about how we're going to go about it. But to all of our listeners, be on the lookout for that TED Talk too. We'll be sharing that too. So again, check out Authors on Mission. Check out Jodi's book on Amazon. We're going to put the links right into this podcast description. Until next time, keep writing, keep growing, and keep making an impact. And stay tuned for the next episode, everybody. Have a great day.